Hello Exiles, this is Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming coming to you with some tips for the Frost Blades Trickster on League Start. I have 5 tips here that are going to be pretty useful if you're going to start Frost Blades Trickster and are going to give you a big boost, especially early on, as a lot of people have a little bit of trouble in the early game. So we'll cover a couple of those, and we'll get to as well a couple of tips that apply a little bit later on as well. First, early game, before you actually start using your claws permanently and getting the claw nodes, you can actually use one-handed swords and daggers as well. We don't get any claw specific nodes until somewhere around Act 3 generally, so all of the different skill gems as far as whirling blades, blade traps, frost blades, viper strike for Brutus, all of those can also be used with one-handed swords as well as daggers. So if you are looking for a good weapon, check those out as well, because and a practice run that I'm showing in the background here, during this run I found a couple of good daggers and a good sword, and not really any good claws. And somebody in my comment section recently said in an early start they had some trouble because they didn't get any claws. So if you don't get any, check your swords and daggers as well. And I mean, just generally speaking, you want to do that. Second tip, use your first few chaos to get Tesalio's Sign and Heat Shiver. This is something that you can use to kind of give yourself a boost. Last league, within the first 2 hours, I had about 4 chaos, and I just spent that on Tesalio's Sign and Heat Shiver, and that allowed me to skip the whole Wrath thing to proc Trinity and go straight into the cold version of the build. So once you get that, you can, instead of going Wrath, go Hatred. Instead of added Lightning, go added Cold, and then later Ice Bite. And start focusing on the core version of the build that requires Heat Shiver. Prior to that, you're going to have to make a few changes just to smooth things out, and it's possible that the prices of these things may go up with the popularity of the build lately, and Heat Shiver just being generally powerful. Even though it is quite common, or has been in the past at least, it might be a little expensive, but definitely when you start getting a couple of chaos dropped, or if you start selling a couple of things, make sure you're checking the website, the trade website, in order to see if you can pick up Tesalio's Sign and Heat Shiver. Tip number 3 is consider using haste instead of grace before you're into maps, especially if you're in softcore. It is possible that you'll end up dying if you do this. You'll have less defenses, of course, but you should still get through to maps a lot faster and start being able to make currency. Both move speed and attack speed are going to speed up your clear and movement, of course, as your movement is going to rely both on movement speed and attack speed with whirling blades. And attack speed just means you kill things faster. And haste got buffed a couple of patches ago and is actually extremely powerful now. So consider using it to level. Tip number 4 is only use the southbound gloves if your crit chance is very high early on. If you have less than like 40% crit with all your buffs up and everything, you're probably not going to want to put on southbound. Even like 50-60 can feel a little bit weird. There are some exceptions, like if you get 2 Tesalio's Sign, you'll get some extra freeze chance on top of your crit early on, and that might help you with leaving stragglers. But otherwise, even though you'll get a huge damage boost with southbound, you'll still have to deal with the fact that if you're not freezing things, you're leaving them behind, and the best way to freeze things is to crit. The second best, of course, is to get freeze chance. So unless you have a very high combination of these two things, or just like probably 60+% crit, don't quite put on those southbound just yet. Tip number 5, other than Betrayal, which of course you'll be doing early on, other good farming strats for the build are going to be Harvest and now Abyss. So I've talked about Harvest. Harvest is really good. Pretty much any league, just allows you to make good items. You can also, do all sorts of different like combinations with getting higher tier level items quickly and harvest crafting them either by buying them, or for instance you can actually get them from expedition as well, from like Rog for instance, or Gwenin, if you gamble higher item levels and craft those via harvest. So that's one way you can kind of get your early level 82, 83, maybe potentially even before you're in red maps, 80 plus item level items. Very useful. But Abyss is kind of new. So Abyss items got a huge buff, and I tested them towards the end of this league and a little bit earlier on when I was kind of finishing up my character. I think I might have done a video. Tekrod's Gaze, which is the unique Murderous Eye Jewel, is a huge DPS boost, and in fact gives you 4 or 5, I think, power charges worth of crit. And it can actually be paired very well with Darkness Enthroned and Bubonic Trail. Bubonic Trail will give you a bunch of bonuses, including less ailment duration, which is huge. You can combine that with the less duration of Ignite that you get from the Pantheon. To basically be immune to ignites, it'll lower the duration of shocks. We're freeze and chill immune as it is, so that's not a big deal. But overall, that's huge. You'll also get a bunch of movement speed, and possibly most important, you'll get mana reservation efficiency, which can potentially free up some points to get rid of the mana mastery for the 12% there. Or you could use that and just slot in another, maybe like Herald or another banner. It could be anything really. Defiance banner. Darkness Enthroned got a huge buff as well and can now roll up to 100% increased effective Abyss Jewels, and that will be a huge DPS buff for you. The only caveat with the boots is that you have to have 1 unique, 1 rare, and 1 magic Abyss Jewel, but that isn't that hard. You can just alt spam for a good like life and cold damage, or cold damage with claws Abyss Jewel, or you can just buy one off somebody. And yeah, as far as the unique, if you have Tekrod's Gaze, you're pretty much set. So starting at 3 Abyss Jewels and working your way up to 5, you'll get an insane DPS boost, and it'll really push your crit chance. Would highly recommend. And those are my 5 tips for League Start. Hope you enjoy. If you choose to play Frost Blades Trickster, I hope you have a wonderful League Start. I hope you have a wonderful League Start regardless. But yeah, let me know if there are any other interesting tips you have, if you played the build in the past, or any realizations you've come to in the comment section below. This has been Ryan from Behind Eyes Gaming, and I'll see you next time. Bye.